A relationship is like a dance. It takes two to tango. Want to have healthy and successful relationships filled with passion, fun, and harmony? Hi, and welcome to the Two to Tango Show with Linda Sutton, a podcast that explores how we can improve your relationships with God, yourself, your intimate partners, and the community. Tune in and learn actionable insights and tips you can use to improve your relationships. The battle of the sexes ends here. Join Linda Sutton today and take your relationships to a whole new level while having fun every step of the way.
Welcome to the Two to Tango Show, where our role and our goal is to help you with all of your relationships. From your relationship with God and self, intimate partner and family, community, nature, and nations. Hi, I am your host and usually doing the most, Linda Sutton. And we say here on the Two to Tango Show that our goal is that the battle of the sexes ends here. But first, we're going to tackle today where the battle of the sexes actually began. And here in the Western cultural context, the battle of the sexes begins the first book of the Christian Bible, Genesis, with the fall of man. So in order to tackle that topic head on, I had to bring back very, very special guest, Mrs. Kisha Gallagher, Hebraic roots scholar, to help us to walk through and understand what actually is being said in Genesis about the fall of man from a Hebraic understanding in terms of definition and Hebraic cultural context, and then give us some insights on what we can draw from that understanding in order to help us to repair relationships, restore relationships, and get back to the original idea and vision for relations, living in the paradise of Eden. Mrs. Kisha Gallagher is the author of Becky books called The Biblical New Moon, A Guide for Celebrating. She is also the lead author of the website Grace and Torah, a ministry devoted to the gospel of Yeshua, Medoim, marital roles, and general Bible study. She is also the former co-host of Hebrew Nation Radio Morning Show and is a new programmer on Revive TV, a Hebraic Roots network. I am so excited to go back and tap into her wisdom, her deep, deep wisdom as it relates to the Hebraic understanding of Genesis. So grab your notepad and pen as we go on this journey back to Eden. Welcome back to the Two to Tango Show, Mrs. Kisha Gallagher. It's so good to have you back.
Thank you. I'm happy to be back.
Awesome. Guys, I'm telling you, it's so good. She is just like a Hebraic scholar extraordinaire. If you didn't have an opportunity to hear the first interview, a podcast interview that we did with her on the roles of man and woman, she went through and gave us a primer on the Hebraic understanding of male and female, man and woman, Adam and Eve, what it means to be a helpmeet, and what was the original idea and divine design for man and woman and relationships through the understanding and context of Hebrew and understanding the original meanings of those words. So if you missed that, you definitely got to go back because she made our heads explode with the truth. It was amazing. Awesome. And it's just so wonderful because it really, really did parallel the level of synergy it had with our understanding of man and woman and their roles of leader and follower. And tango just so aligned with what you were explaining to us was the root word and context of the words that were used to explain kind of the design, the function, the purpose, the roles and responsibilities of man and woman from the outset in Genesis. So that was just really extraordinary. Thank you for your masterful work and your wisdom and your sharing in that regard. So, wow, you guys go check that out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we had to have, pardon, please.
No, I just said it's a labor of love, Linda. This is, my favorite topic, actually. So
And you're brilliant at it. And thank you for sharing your time. So thank you for coming back with us, because the way that we left off the last conversation was really just us to have an understanding of the basics, like to really just understand what is really being said in the text. Yes, there is the English translations translated through Greek and Hebrew, but really getting back to the original context, not only in terms of meaning, but also in terms of culture, what those words meant. And I really thought that was important, because in Anatomy of a Tango, we've been talking about leader and follower, male and female, man and woman, and masculine and feminine energies.
Right.
So we've been talking about that. So now I wanted to deal with the fall. And kind of what happens when things break down. What does that look like? Where did that start? Kind of some of the habits and patterns we have of where it falls apart. Because I'm interested to hear that, because there are certain places where it falls apart in the dance. But there was something at the very end of the last interview that I want you to say again that will set the context for this interview. And you were talking about kind of the original idea and how in the cyclical nature, the whole point of this is to get back to kind of Eden and that original idea. Will you restate that for us, if you remember kind of the thought around that? Like, what is the point of all of this?
Well, everything in Scripture is cyclical. It's all about getting back. And the prophets say the beginning is the end and the end is the beginning. And that's where we want to get to. So that's what we're working toward. We want to, Messiah came so that he could bring a restoration of all things. And that includes the dynamics, the relationships between men and women. And so where does he give in his ideal? Well, way back in Genesis 1 and 2 is where we learn about that. So we want to go back there. And by doing that, it doesn't mean we're going to be perfect. We're still going to make some mistakes. But if that is what our minds and our hearts are set on as a couple, you know what? The failings don't matter so much. We know that we're going to learn from that, and we're going to get back up, and we're going to keep moving forward, because we know that if we can move and flow together, then we are going to be prosperous. We're going to be blessed. We're going to have a healthy relationship. Our children are going to go forward and have that setting in their mind, instead of the brokenness that many of us came from. A lot of us came from very broken relationships with our parents, their relationships. And so we carry that forward because it's the only way we know how to act or to respond in situations. And then we just keep repeating the same thing over and over. Well, we want to go back to that beginning. And that means we might have to shift some paradigms. It might mean we have to sometimes even go against what our first sense or nature is. Because if our first sense and nature is coming from a place of abuse or brokenness or fear, it may not be the right response, because we're wanting to self-persevere or preserve ourselves, and then not regarding whatever they're doing. And that's those energies not flowing together. They're not working together. So we learned about that ideal in the first segment. And what we're going to look at here is how it broke down, the consequences of the broke down. Because, hey, we're living in those. We live in the consequences right now. But then what is God's ideal? And I think both men and women, when they understand that those deep desires that they have as being a man and being a husband, or as being a woman, or as being a wife, those deep, deep desires, they're not wrong. We might not be acting them out properly, but they're still instilled in us. Eternity is instilled in the heart of man. That's what it says in Ecclesiastes. So we have it in us. And so we just need to know how to walk it out.
Absolutely. I love it. And it reminds me, because there's something that you said in the last interview about it all being in seed form. And so, just kind of like understanding, and I say this constantly. We said this when we launched the fashion line about the divine design, like, and how, for what purpose were you fashioned? and understanding that the distinctions between men and women are by design, and there's no accident that you came forth as a man or you came forth as a woman. And with that is all of the function. There is function and purpose, even just in the design and nature of who you are, even beyond the additional piece of your calling or your assignment. Right. And so I think sometimes we try to separate and we try to make our calling and assignment one thing, but, like lose sight of the fact that, as I like to say, like a hammer, you can use it for other things. It can do other things, but it was designed and its purpose is to hammer in nails or remove them.
Yes.
Or remove them. But that's what it's for. You can use it as a doorstop. You can use it as a weapon. You can use it as all sorts of things. Yeah. But that was its function and purpose. And it operates best when it's used in its function and purpose.
Yes, it is.
So let's go into Genesis. And I know this is going to be triggering for a lot of people. I know I'm not just going to deal with it up front because I told them that I told them that I was going to take it on, take it head on in this battle of the sexes, because this is, to me, one of the places, this is where the battle of the sexes begins.
Yeah, it is. It absolutely
is. This is where it begins.
Not just to you, in scripture, this is where it begins.
Okay. Okay, so it's not just me. So this is the original battle of the sexes. So that's what I will call it. This is the starting point. I think I'll call the show that. And so our goal in this show is, and our tagline for the show is, the battle of the sexes ends here.
Oh,
so that's what our goal is. So hopefully in this show, we'll have enough context to understand what started this battle of the sexes and how we can come out of it so that we can get back to the ideal that in the original envision idea of us being in partnership in Eden.
In Eden, yes.
Okay, so let's get to the fall, honey, because a lot of women's is going to be triggered. I know, because we feel like we the blame of it all. Right. Like Eve is the reason that all this went to Hades in the handbasket. And so,
maybe we should start with a question then.
Yes.
Because we're gonna open right here in Genesis 3 with the fall, and it's going to tell us about the serpent, and he's going to approach Eve. So why, based on everything we learned in the first segment, why did the serpent, do you think, approach Eve and not Adam? Because what we've heard in tons of commentaries, sermons, and things throughout the years is he approached her because she was the weak one. She was prone to deception. Mm-hmm. But based on the ideal creation, that how God created female, where does it say that she was weak, or where does it say she was prone to deception? It doesn't say that.
Exactly. And can you remind us how was she described in that process?
Well, whether you're looking at the nekuvah, which means she was like a female, which is she's a boundary setter, or if you're looking at her as the Isha, the woman, or that can be translated as wife as well, she is like a fire, just like her counterpart, the male. They have a fire. She has a fiery breath that she's meant to use, and she's not a dragon, girls. It's not.
Speaking life, speaking the word. Yes,
it is speaking, edification and encouragement, all those wonderful things, not fiery dragon words. But that's who she is. But specifically, she was created for Adam to be his helpmeet. That is the Ezer Kenegdo. And the Ezer Kenegdo specifically means in Hebrew, she is a helper that opposes. She is a helper that is in his face, right in front of him. And she is a helper most specifically to help him not do his dishes, but she's a helper to help him maintain obedience. Because when God says he's going to give an Ezer Kenegdo to Adam, the verse right above it, so that's its context, is he gave him a commandment not to eat of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And so that's her design. And so she came forth from Adam. Adam came forth from the ground. Adam's mandate was to till and work and guard and keep the thing from which he came from, the Adamah, the ground. Eve's mandate is the same. She came forth from Adam. She is to guard and keep and maintain and serve and protect her Adam, where she came from, her man. Okay, so if you were the serpent, and she is a type of spiritual guard for his spiritual obedience, because, there's a lot of things the man does not need help with whatsoever. He's perfectly capable, just like you are. Okay, but where he needs help, and where we all need help, women need help here too, is in accountability. So where does he go? He's going to go, if he wants to take out Adam, he's going to go to the one that would actually keep him accountable, right? He's going to go to her first. If he can get through the gatekeeper, because that's sort of what she is in that regard, then he's got Adam.
Gotcha.
And of course, we learned that he does that through deception, and we'll get into that. So maybe we should just look at the scripture and see what
absolutely. And then I want to underscore, because you were saying that in the last one, I believe Zakar is the one who is responsible, which is the male. Yes. Is responsible for remembering the word, remembering God, remembering the word. So since he's responsible for remembering the word, he's responsible for, be obedient to the commandment, then that would also explain, because he would need to get through her to get Adam to be disobedient.
He would.
Yes. Absolutely. Okay. I just wanted to underscore that and remind them of that. Okay. Awesome. Let's dive in.
Let's dig in. All right. I'm reading from Green's literal translation. This is Genesis 3, 1 through 5. And the serpent was cunning above every beast of the field, which Adonai God made. And he said to the woman, did God really say, you shall not eat from any tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the tree of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree of the middle of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat of it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. And the serpent said to the woman, dying, you shall not die. And that's actually how that's phrased in Hebrew. Dying, you shall not die. For God knows that in the day you eat of it, even your eyes shall be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. Okay. That's packed. Just 3 verses in it. There's a lot going on, right? So he approaches her and he asked her, he makes her question. He's planting seeds of doubt. Did God really say this? And her response to him, notice, was, yeah, she wasn't supposed to eat the tree, but she added something. What was it?
Not to touch it.
Not to touch it. Where do you think she got that idea from?
In my mind, she had to have gotten it from Adam.
Most likely so. Yes. It could have been either way. She could have thought, I'm going to put these extra protections up so that we stay obedient. But more than likely, he told her the commandment he was given, and he's the one that did that. Exactly. He was trying to give a little overprotection for her, maybe, in that regard. Either way, it was an addition. It was adding. And the fact that likely the serpent was near that tree, touching that tree, and wasn't dying, it probably made her doubt even more. There's lots of ways to look at this little archetypal story, and that's really what it is. And so then if we move on into the next verses, then that's when she saw the tree. I want you to notice all of the senses that are being used in this thing, especially with the eyes. When the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was desirable to make one wise, she took from its fruit and ate. And she gave also to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked. And they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves loin coverings. All right. So usually, we look at this as women and we're like, why did she do this? And, and then she gave it to him and he ate. It was just this whole big mess. But we have to realize the text clearly tells us as we move forward, she was deceived. She was deceived by the serpent. But Adam was not deceived.
Exactly.
Okay. So why do you think he ate? Why did he eat the fruit? If he knew what was going on. And by the way, the text says he was with her, im in Hebrew, meaning he was close enough, like they were touching elbows. Mm-hmm. He watched the whole thing go down. I've read commentaries where they say Adam was off somewhere. And I'm like, nope, the text says he was with her. Mm-hmm. So he saw the thing go down and he still partook of the fruit. Really what happened is she was tempted by something that a delight to her eyes. It was almost like a lust for wisdom. And it's not like God didn't give them wisdom. They had wisdom to function in their purpose. They had to be in their role. He had blessed them. So they definitely had everything they needed to go forward and be fruitful and healthy and all those great things. Mm-hmm. So her as a Nazir Kened go, her one desire above all else is to function in her purpose, to function as the helpmeet for Adam. So maybe the temptation to be wise, to gain more wisdom, might make her think, oh, well, that's going to help me do my job better. Maybe I'll be better at what I'm doing. And I think that temptation and deception often comes to us in forms like that. It's just that little thing. If you just had this, then, you could do better or you'd be better. When in reality, the Lord has already put everything, it's in there. It might be in seed form yet, might not have manifested yet, but it's in there. Doesn't need to come from that outside source. So when Adam ate, he wasn't deceived. So really she put something before God, which was the desire to gain more wisdom. And probably if she'd asked God, he would have given it to her. But that sort of thing that she would desire to be better. And then Adam put her first. So anytime we put anything in front of that relationship with God, whether it's a person, whether it's a thing, whether it's a desire, if it comes first, it always leads to a fall. And it's really because we lack trust. We're not trusting him. And so
oh, please go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Because I had an interjection, because this is also a place where it breaks down for me. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that was the thing that's always come to me, and it comes up in our discussions is that Eve might not have known. Adam definitely should have known. But then the other piece of it that breaks down is that when she added the extra piece, if he miscommunicated, why didn't he correct her at that moment? Like to let her know, no, it's not touch. It's this, and therefore perhaps, because then the sequence after that is that she goes on, and the serpent's like, no, maybe not. And so then she takes of the fruit, and because she touches it, she doesn't die immediately. Then she eats of the fruit, and then she doesn't die immediately. And so then she hands it to him. So you have all this series of things that are happening that that kind of is unfortunately confirming. He's like, well, yes, I said not to touch, and then whatever. But Adam could have been like, oh, wait a minute, I didn't say touch now. Just don't eat. Because in the previous text, we talk about how he gave him the commandment before the creation of Eve. Yeah. So he gave him the commandment. So he was responsible for that. And you were talking about how Sakar means to remember and to keep the word. So that's his one role and responsibility, is the one thing that he has to keep track of. So, always in the back of my mind is like, well, if that's the one thing that you're named after, that's your role, that's your function, and you didn't make that correction, why didn't he make that correction? Why didn't he correct or note that? Because that would have also been his responsibility to make sure that the word that we are living in aligns with the word that the Lord has given us. Exactly. So that's an interesting thing. That's just an interesting note that always comes up. I don't know if you have an insight on that, but.
No, I think this whole story would have been different if they had just done that one thing. If they had just said, hold up, wait a minute, let me go check something real quick, and get along, go to the word yourself and look it up or pray. I think that would have made all the difference. Neither one of them did that in this case. Him actually really knowing better still didn't. And she was deceived. And so anytime we think, this sounds sort of right, or it sounds sort of true, and I'm seeing some evidence that it might be true, we still need to go check. right? She could have went to Adam and said, now tell me that commandment again. What was what did God say? Or, she could have went to him herself, but he also, knowing, still partook of the fruit. And so likely it was because he knew if she disobeyed, he was right in the boat with her. He didn't want to lose her. If she had eaten and he hadn't, they no longer would have been compatible. They no longer could have functioned together whatsoever, because you would have one that was fallen and one that wasn't. So, and men, this sometimes, if she's pushing you in a little bit, because we're good at pushing, women are. We're good at trying to get our way sometimes, even if it's not what we should be is pushing toward. And you know that it's not right, but you go along with it because you want to keep peace in your house, or you want to, you just don't want to argue with it, or you just truly want her to be happy, because that is a good desire for men to have, to make their wives happy. But you do it knowingly. It's not good. It's not good. You need to speak up. You need to say something.
Absolutely. And then there's the other piece, and I think you say in terms of keeping her happy, because the other thing that I take note of in the text is that it's always interesting to me, like I said, the sequence, it's like their eyes it's like they both ate and then their eyes were open. And it always is fascinating to me. It's like, well, why weren't her eyes open before he ate? Because then she would have known that what she was doing was wrong. So why was it until after he ate that both of it made a very clear point in the text that, she ate, she handed it to him, he ate, and then it says in the text, both their eyes were open. And I'm like, what's the significance of that sequencing? Like, why didn't it? Because like I said, if she had gone, she would have been like, I did something really, really wrong.
Well, this is bad.
Bad. But she didn't get that awareness until after he ate, which was just astounding to me. I don't know if you have an insight on that.
Well, it may be because they're echad. They're one flesh. You can think of her having one of the eyes and him being an eye. I mean, then the eyes of both of them were open. So, there's some really neat midrashic stories, and those are just Jewish stories that from the text that go into detail based on the Hebrew and based on different aspects and verses that are found elsewhere in the Old Testament that say that what happened when Adam and Eve, before they ate this fruit, that they had a luminous type skin. They had light. Now, that sounds sort of crazy, right? But remember when Moses went up on the mountain and he was in God's presence and then his face shone? Yeah. And they had, or when they saw Jesus, like on the Mount of Transfiguration, and he was like glowing, or in the book of Revelation, he's like this, he has this luminance to his skin. So what they say happened here is they lost that. That's the nakedness that was there. And that's what they realized immediately. They're like, okay, this is all bad, right?
Got it. Okay, yeah. Awesome. Okay, so and also to clarify, there's also always been that I was like, some additional insights on that. So that's wonderful. Okay, so now they can see, and then then the Lord shows up, and it's like, oh no, they went and got some fig leaves.
Yeah, and I really think, this is the fig leaves. It's really like they covered themselves with the leaves of the tree of which they had consumed. Now, doesn't mean you shouldn't eat figs. I'm not saying that is the forbidden fruit.
That's the forbidden.
No longer eat figs. No, that's not. but it's very likely, especially when you look at figurative language in the Bible and how the word itself is compared to a tree of life. So you can see how them trying to cover themselves, it was like they were just they were using that thing that they had fell with. But what happened in the very next verses is they heard the sound of the Lord walking in the garden in the cool of the day. And the man and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord among the trees of the garden. And then the Lord called and said to him, "Where are you?" And he said, "I heard the sound of you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid myself." So notice when their eyes were opened with this wisdom that they got from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, it obviously wasn't godly wisdom. This would be like wisdom from below. This is the first time that we see the attribute of fear. They were afraid. And fear, I truly believe every decision we make is rooted in either love or fear. Because the opposite of love is not hate, it's fear. Hate is just a symptom of fear. That's where that comes from. It comes from because we're afraid of something. And so because of what they did, they tried to hide, which is not like you can hide from God. And when he says, "Where are you?" that Hebrew term for that phrase doesn't mean, "Where are you? Where's your physical location?" Because I don't know it. That's not what it means. It's like, where are you? Like, what happened? It's like it's more of an emotional expression. Like, where are you at? We're not on the same page anymore. There's a schism. Yeah, there's a schism. Yeah. And it was caused by their fear. And that we do try to hide from God too. When we know, just our conscience, every person has a conscience. And it gets to you. I mean, or if you've done something, you might even go into a bit of a depression and you just want to stay under the covers for a while. It's that same sort of emotion that they were feeling here. So really fear is the beginning of this schism, Linda, but even between man and woman, because this was breaking relationship with God, and it put a schism between them two.
Wow. Got it.
Okay, so we can go then immediately into consequence, if you want.
Consequences. Well, I want to interject a little bit, because when you're talking about the schism piece and the fact that when he said, "Where are you?" it's a reflection of the fact that the man and the woman, that God is saying, there's a disconnect here, that I can't sense where you are. Like, we were connected, we were in sync before, and now something has shifted and you're hiding, and I can sense that. And I'm letting you know, like, we're not on the same page anymore. It's so interesting that you said that, because it's like struck in the core and heart of what I understand about tango, which is this idea that I tell gentlemen that the woman who is following you becomes so intimately familiar with the nuances of you that you aren't even aware of, that when something is off, like, she can detect it immediately.
Wow.
And the reason that if something has changed with you, the reason that she can detect it immediately is because she's developed such a synergy and harmony with you, that when something is off with you, even though she can't always articulate where that comes from, she can sense. And so a lot of times you see in relationships where the man says, the woman's like, "Are you okay? What's wrong with you?" And he goes, "I am fine." And she's like, she can tell because there's something that's off. Yeah. But the reason it's off is because she knows him so well. She's so intimately familiar with, the way his body moves, the way his muscles contract, the way he breathes when he's thinking, the way he breathes when he's confused. Like, she is aware of all of those nuances that even he isn't aware of.
Yeah.
So when any of that shifts, she picks up on it immediately. And so when you said that, "Where are you?" as a sign of kind of picking up on that disconnect in the schism, it made me immediately think about where the schism happens in the dance and also in the relationships as a result. Because then they can't be on the same page. They're not on the same page anymore. Yeah. And it's not because they're not, it's because something has changed with the gentleman.
Yes. The lead.
And the lead. And she senses it because she's not initiating anything.
Right.
And so he's not there to sense the change. She's there to sense the change. Her role and responsibility is to stay in sync with him. And so when something changes with him, so I just wanted to underscore that, because that's something that we talk about loud and a lot. And I was like, "Ooh, that's deep."
It is.
Super deep. Okay, so we're getting back to the consequences. I just wanted to underscore that for them.
Yeah, oh, it's beautiful. Again, the analogies could not be more perfect. Only God could orchestrate that. It's amazing to me.
But God.
Okay, so then, of course, we have God that's going to now tell them, all right, look, this is what's happened. First, he asked them, who told you that you were naked? Have you eaten from the tree of which I commanded you not to eat? And obviously, God knows they have. I mean,
exactly.
He's at this point, it's like, you asking your kid, did you get in that cookie jar? You know they had, but you're just going to see if they're going to tell you the truth or not. And so what's the man's response? Now, remember,
he asked the man specifically, right?
Specifically. And there's a reason he asked him specifically.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. So, but first, he's responsible for the word, the foundation.
Yeah.
Okay. That's his job. And so what is the man's response? Now, you have to remember that he's coming from a place now of fear. Mm-hmm. He's not coming from that relationship, that strong relationship connection that he had with God, nor with Hava or Eve. He is coming from a dark place. And, even neuroscience teaches us today, about fear. When you're in fear, you can't receive. We can't receive fully. I mean, we're almost like in that hindbrain and can't even process well. Mm-hmm. If we don't feel loved and we don't feel safe, we can make some really bad decisions because we're not even thinking with our executive brain at that point. Mm-hmm. And so his immediate response, right, in the place of fear, the woman you gave to be with me, she gave me from the tree and I ate.
Why are you asking me? It's her fault. She the one cooking dinner. All I did is ate the plate.
Yeah.
Ask her, don't ask me. Where the food came from.
Yes.
But yes.
Funny. Yeah. That's perfect. Yeah, that's good because he was angry. And in Hebrew, the anger is expressed very strongly. You can see it more just by the Hebrew words that were chosen. He was mad at God and he was mad at Eve. He's mad at both of them. So remember, we said anger was a symptom of fear. I mean, that's one of the things that happens when we get afraid. Then we get mad. We're from that's stemming from that fear. So then he asked the woman, and we're just following straight through this chapter in Genesis 3, if you're wondering where we're at. And then he says to her, what is this you have done? And she said, she doesn't even mention Adam. She says, the serpent deceived me and I ate. She realized her eyes were definitely open. She realized what happened.
Open. She knew
I screwed up. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so, we see this blame thing with Adam going on. And anytime we're the one that's responsible, we can tend to blame other people. I mean, that's like our first go-to. No, I didn't, I didn't do that. Wasn't me.
With me. It was her. It was them. And by the way, you gave me her too. So it's your fault too.
Exactly. That's exactly what
the boldness of that was just like powerful to me. Because it was just like, if you hadn't gave me her, then none of this would have happened. I was like looking for the lightning bolt.
Seriously. Yeah. You would almost expect those at that point, right? Because his job was to be responsible in that area. That's what he was as a male, as a zakar. This was the essence of his being. Yeah. And so, though God questioned him first because he was that responsible party, now we're going to see a reversal because he was the last one that God dealt with when it came to the consequence. So you see him here at the first, and then you see him at the last there. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a reason for that too, because it's like
gotcha. He's like, okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, you blaming me? Okay, I'll deal with you later.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. We're going to come back to that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let's continue, please.
So then we have the Lord, instead of dishing out curses. Actually, let's talk about the word curse because I think that's misunderstood too. When we think of curses, we often think of almost like a voodoo hex type thing or something like that. But that's not what curse means in Hebrew. In Hebrew, a curse is a movement away from the ideal, a movement away from something's purpose and function. Okay. It's
so operating outside the function of purpose.
Yes. It's
wow.
Yes. And it's a movement away from the commandments of God, which because they're about our function and purpose too. So it's not like a hex. God didn't hex them. And as a matter of fact, if you pay attention when we're reading these, God does not curse Adam and Eve. Because he blessed them. Remember, that's the first thing he did. You can't curse what God has blessed, and God's not going to curse what he's blessed. But what he did curse has to do with their role and function, because they perverted it, and by eating of the tree, now they're gonna live in it. It's almost like you made your bed, now you're gonna lie in it for a while. But instead of addressing Adam or Hava first, which is Eve, he addresses the serpent. So this is really a chiasm here. And a chiasm is just a poetic structure that your Bible has tons and tons and tons of them. So you see Adam at the first, you see Adam at the last. Okay. But and then he deals with Hava, Eve. He tells her, what did you do? Or asks her, what did you do? And then you're going to see her consequence. It'll come right before Adam's. And then right in the center of this story, which is really the heart of the message, is everything with the serpent. And God doesn't question the serpent. He just starts telling him, tells him. He says, because you've done this, cursed are you more than all cattle and more than every beast of the field. On your belly you will go, and dust you will eat all the days of your life. And I'll put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. And he shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. That's it. That's all that's told to the serpent. But within that one, in Genesis 3:15, is one of the greatest prophecies that are in Scripture. Right there when he says, I'm going to put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed, and he shall bruise you on the head, and you shall bruise him on the heel. You're going to see this play out through the rest of your Bible. So it gets to its final conclusion that you see in the book of Revelation. So that message being in the center of this story, because, they didn't have highlighters, they didn't have bolding, they didn't have quotation marks, they didn't have something like that. So if you wanted to highlight something in the text, they did it through literary device, and a chiasm is a literary device. And so that's what that is. And so then we get back to Eve, and he says to the woman, notice it says in the text, to the woman, he said. So who's he speaking to?
To the woman.
To the woman. He's not speaking to the man, right? He's speaking to the woman. This is important because this verse gets twisted all the time and misinterpreted all the time. But he's talking to the woman, and he says, I will greatly multiply your pain in childbirth. In pain you will bring forth children, and your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. And we're going to break that down, okay? Because it's very, very important. But then to the man, he says, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten from the tree, which I've commanded you, saying, you shall not eat it. Cursed is the ground, the Adamah, because of you. And you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face, you will eat bread till you return to the ground, because from it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Now, if you haven't watched the first segment, this is it.
Or listen to it.
Yes, or listen to it. This might go over your head just a teensy bit. We're going to try to explain it though, because in the beginning of this one, we talked about how Adam came from the Adamah, which is the ground. And that's the thing that he was going to take care of. He was going to serve. He was going to till. He's going to keep. He's going to guard it. So notice what is actually cursed. And when I hate the word curse, I think consequence is a better term here. The consequence to his sin is the thing, the function, his function and purpose in the earth, is now going to be hard.
Yeah, it's going to be
what was once easy is now going to be difficult. It's going to cost you some sweat, blood, and tears now, where, the ground would have easily, produced for you before.
Yes. So just clarifying, in the first podcast episode that you did with us, you were explaining the relationship between Adam, his name, and Adamah, which is what he came forth from, Adamah being the ground that he would till and that he was formed from, and that his name was Adam. I just wanted to clarify that, even to make sure I'm following you, and for everybody else as well.
Yes, exactly.
Awesome. Okay.
So the thing from which he came is what he was supposed to serve. And yet that's the thing that now is going to be hard. God's original design wasn't that it be hard, but the consequence is now it's going to be difficult. So the same thing happens to Eve. Remember, she came from Adam, not the ground. And so what was her function and purpose? Well, we talked about what the Yezer Kenegdo does. She surrounds and protects, and she builds upon the foundation, which is her man. This is her function and purpose. And that does have to do with physical children, but it also has to do with, I want you to think broader than that. Think of that as a metaphor. You giving birth to something, okay? It's going to be hard, and it's going to be painful. So both of them have toil and pain now associated with their function and purpose. But she's got more than just childbearing and birthing and manifesting things to life. She's also got this relationship with Adam. And so that last phrase that was given to her in Genesis 3:16, your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Okay, so I can't tell you how many different sermons and commentaries I've heard on that verse. And it's presented as if this is the mandate where man is supposed to rule over women. But remember, who was God talking to here? Was it man? Did he say, Adam, you need to rule over that woman now?
No, he's talking directly to the woman.
He was talking directly to her, and he's telling her, look, honey, this is what's going to happen. This is the consequence of what you did. And so a consequence to sin is that her desire is going to be for him, and yet he will rule or master you, because that word for rule is really important there. It's the Hebrew word mashal. And mashal means ruler, master, but it's also the same word for parable or proverb. And so a parable and a proverb are supposed to help rule or master your thinking. They're supposed to turn and master your thinking toward the right path. Okay, so there is a ruling and mastering aspect. And to make matters even worse, if you want to twist this and say, okay, this is the precedent for men to master women, because there's a whole different concept of having a leader and a follower than having being mastered. That's
a master and a slave, basically. Totally different relationship.
Totally different relationship, and not God's intention here. But if we go into Genesis chapter 4 with Cain, then we get an understanding, an even deeper understanding of what this phrase means, because it's the same one is essentially given. Let me see. I think it's Genesis 4:7.
So the word mashah that's in that verse where God is talking to Eve is the same word mashah that you're getting ready to refer to in Cain and Abel.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Right. I hope I didn't get that wrong.
No, you didn't. But we're gonna dig in there, because it's really important to understand what this means. Okay, we're gonna get into her desire. We're gonna talk about that Hebrew word too, but this last phrase is vital. So if we don't get anything else, we won't get this one, because it's going to help us so much. So in Genesis 4:6-7, This is the story of Cain and Abel. And I think you guys probably know Cain ended up killing Abel, and, it was all bad. He became the first murderer.
Wasn't good.
It was not good.
Didn't work out too well for the brotherhood.
Yeah. So what essentially happened, I'm going to give you the setup for that story. They both, Cain and Abel, brothers, by the way, they bring offerings to the Lord. And the Lord is pleased with Abel's offering, but he's not pleased with Cain's offering. And you know what? Cain, he's miffed by this. He's not
some kind of way.
Yeah, he's like, what? You take what he offered, you're not taking what I offered. So, he was a little hurt, a little offended. Okay.
In his feelings, as we say nowadays.
Yes, his feelings were hurt.
What? Okay.
So this is what it says. Then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why has your countenance fallen? If you do well or good, will not your countenance be lifted up? So we can see a fallen countenance is a Hebrew idiom for anger.
Okay.
So he's saying, if you do good, if you do well, your countenance will be lifted back up, because emotions change. We all know this.
Yes.
Our feelings do change. And he says, but if you don't do well, sin is crouching at the door. And here's the phrase that's matching our one here with Eve. And its desire is for you, but you must master it. So in this case, God is telling someone to master something. But what he's telling him to master is his emotions. He's like, look, if you will master this emotion, and instead of letting that emotion master you, all's going to be well. But if you don't, it's going to be turned into sin. And we know it did, because he ended up killing his brother. And so you need to master it. But that's the exact same phrase that is used. So that's giving us an idea of what's going on with the consequence or the curse with Eve. This was not a commandment for men. It was not prescriptive, meaning, or proscriptive, meaning that it was a directive given. This was descriptive. It's describing to her what was going to now take place. And we already know that Adam was a bit angry with her, wasn't he? Over this whole ordeal, just a little bit, man.
Thank God.
Yes. He had already blamed her. So in a sense, this is where that battle really, it began with fear, but this is where it took root right here. And that's where we see subjugation of women. We do see some misogyny. The Bible actually chronicles a lot of it, but what it's chronicling is this fallen mandate, because the idea from the beginning was, yes, he was a leader, but there's an expression basically like a governor. A good governor, serves you. You don't serve the governor.
Exactly.
All right. And that's exactly what he was. He was a servant, but so was she. As a matter of fact, that's really what Christianity teaches. That's what Judaism teaches. In the New Testament, we are to serve one another. This is why we're supposed to submit to one another. The model for that was Jesus, who said he came not to be served, but to serve.
Yes.
And so everything, if we want to flow and move and work well together, we serve one another.
Yeah.
We're all in a type of servant role. Even a leadership role is a servant role.
Absolutely.
And so when you have one that's trying to rule or master or take dominion over another person, then obviously that's a perversion of that servant role.
Exactly.
It then becomes about power, and that is not God's intent. Exactly.
It's interesting. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Because in the entire leader, what it means to be a leader in Tango, we tackle that, which is leader. Leader is a relationship to the follower. Without a follower, there is no leader. And without a follower who is willing to lend their power or into the shared mission that the leader is supposed to initiate, there's no leader. So it's not about power, it's about vision. It's about a shared vision.
A shared vision is a good way to put that. Yeah.
Yeah. And that the follower has agreed, okay, yes, I want to lend my power to that. I want to aggregate my power to do that. But without that agreement, without that alignment, you don't have a leader. You can't have a leader that has any power.
No, and a leader that takes power. Now then you've got a tyrant.
Yeah, that's not a leader.
That is not a leader. Yes.
A leader requires a follower. If it could be something else, but it's not a leader. Awesome. I think that, so thank you so much. That is just the clarity on that is so important, that's where that started. But like I said, I want to bring it full circle, and I wanted to address the blame piece as in my closing remark on this, because the place where, when you were talking about the fact that you said in the previous podcast episode interview, and you're said in this one again, you restated, like, we're on this side of the cross. So in the chronology of Christianity, that happened, but the redemption for that fall, for that original sin, that missing the mark, was the coming of Christ. And so then Christ, his death and his sacrifice was to redeem that. So it's like, okay, it was supposed to reconcile that. And so it's so interesting, because as we talked about the whole blaming piece of it, I mentioned to you offline, there's one verse that just like stood out to me as a reflection of that reconciliation. And I think I said it to you, and that it was, it shows up in Ephesians 5, and I'm going to pull up my notes. I don't have notes like you, but I got my notes. And it's, of course, we'll talk on another episode about where in Ephesians 5:21 through 25, where he talks about the whole submission piece. And that's a whole another thing. Yes. But we're in Ephesians 5:25, where he says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, to make her holy, cleansing her by the washing of the water through the word, and to present her to himself as a radiant church without stain or wrinkle or any other blemish, but holy and blameless. Amen. And that whole blameless piece is the thing that kind of stands out to me most, because here's this instruction of the husbands kind of reconciling in the way that Christ reconciles. So Christ is like, you need to have this relationship with your wife the way that I have with the church. And the way that I have it is that this is what I've reconciled. And so now I charge you with kind of washing her in the same way, and removing all the spots and removing all of the blemishes and stains and leaving her without blame. And to me, that was kind of a restoration, because in that original encounter, he blamed her.
Exactly. So first Adam blamed.
Yes.
And Adam leaves her blameless.
Reconcile. Exactly.
Yes. So it's a complete reversal of that, blame and shame game that was played in the beginning.
Absolutely.
Right. The opposite. And it's a very beautiful thing. And actually, Paul even says that in Ephesians, what I'm really telling you is this mystery, this is Messiah in his body, he's using that marriage analogy. So that's the intimacy that he desires with us. It's that close. And he is a good husband. He's going to completely cover you. He knows you got faults. He knows you've got blemishes, but he's going to fix you up. He's going to, clean you up. And he's not going to point any fingers at you.
Exactly.
He took all of it on him.
Yes. That's ultimate reconciliation right there.
Yes,
awesome.
It's beautiful.
I love it. So I just wanted to say, oh my gosh. So we're going to bring this full circle, because as we close out, now that we understand that this is where this breakdown happens, how do we begin to move ourselves back in the direction? How do we get ourselves back towards moving towards getting back on track to eating? Now that we have this understanding, now that we understand that there has been this kind of step of reconciliation through Christ, the coming of Christ. Now, how do we move forward from this so that we can end this battle to the sexes?
Well, the first thing I'm going to tell you is what nearly every marriage self-help book eventually says, okay? And that is, you can't change your partner. The only one you have control over is you.
Absolutely.
So what you have to work on is you. And so, they'll tell you, do this for your husband, even if you don't feel like it, or same thing with your wife, start doing these things. Shut your mouth with anything negative, only speak positive things. So even if you're feeling the negative, you want to say something, just shut your mouth and only speak positivity. Well, they're telling you that because eventually your feelings catch up with your actions.
Mm-hmm.
And your actions are going to directly affect them. So when you change, it changes them. It is just absolutely backwards to our minds, but it really is true. That's why all the books tell us this. If you want true reconciliation, you have to first put yourself out there. You're going to be vulnerable. And you're also going to have to be humble. It doesn't matter if you're the man or the woman. You both need humility. Humility has to come first. And then you can get to that love and respect, that reciprocal nature where you have the woman who is told to reverence and respect and honor her husband. But you have the man who is directly commanded in scripture to love his wife. And this love is a sacrificial love. It is being willing to die, just like that Ephesians passage that you're talking about from Ephesians 5 talks about, willing to die. And you're like, well, which comes first though? You know what? It's like the dance. When you're watching it, which you don't really know. It's flowing and moving together. So that's why my first piece of advice is key. Focus on you and think, I'm going to be the best I can be. Even if they're rubbing against me, driving me crazy, it's like, I'm going to work on me. And I'm not even talking about dysfunctional, abusive relationships right here. Okay. You know that. That's a whole different ballgame. But just in the normal course of just human interaction, you know how we do. So work on you. I am going to control my mouth. I'm going to be positive. I'm going to speak life words to them, around them, for them. Even if I'm doing it with my teeth gritted, I'm going to do it.
I love it. Thank you so much. And I love it because you give us kind of this bridge from kind of that battle to the steps of repair that we can take so that we can get to that reciprocal nature. Because you know what? I truly believe most men and women really want to be in a healthy, happy relationship. Of course.
And if we, and so I don't even think that that's something that we have to, I don't know if they really want that. Yes, they do. At their heart, who doesn't want to have that harmony and that peace? They do want it. And so if we can just get over ourselves for a little bit, and humble ourselves, we can have that. And we can then sit down and go, you know what? This is what the ideal looks like. So once you get to that place, then you can start discussing, okay, how can we start doing our groove together to make this happen? Where you're honored and respected, I'm loved, and it's all just going back and forth, perfectly flowing.
Excellent. And I appreciate it because I think you have kind of set the stage for that by giving us kind of an intimate understanding of it and really kind of helping us to break down some of the mischaracterizations and misunderstandings and painting the picture of the original roles and functions and designs. Because I think with number one, understanding the original roles discussion, the original roles and design, that number one can help us to have a mutual respect for the fact that we are definitely created different and that we have different roles and functions as a part of the whole. And then the other piece, which is, okay, now that we understand that and we understand it is equal but opposite, now we can use that to do what we were originally created to do, be co-creators and co-rulers in this earth and this wonderful paradise that God created for us. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I know that was dense and intense, y'all, but we had to get it all while she was here. We can't have her 5 days of the week. We can get her for a little bit of time, but the information will be there for our study, for our review. We will definitely be going back to it, referring to your work. Thank you so much. I'm going to tell them more detail about how to get in contact with you and to review your work and all of your amazing work there. Of course, your book, you have a book that'll be there that they can look at and as it relates to the moon cycle. So all of that. And hopefully you'll come back and talk with us about
love to. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on the Two to Tango show. And we're going to, after you leave us, we're going to process this, kind of pull it all together. Thank you so much, Kisha. It has been such
Thank you.
All right, you take care, and we'll be right back as we process our work with Mrs. Kisha Gallagher here on the Two to Tango show. Wow. As usual, our conversations with Mrs. Gallagher are so revelatory. I mean, they are dense and intense. She gives us a lot of information and a lot of food for thought and a lot of understanding. Probably be careful on that food for thought after we talking about eating fruit that you ain't got to miss eating. But I just love the way that she just takes literally sometimes word by word, and especially the most important words, and gives us the proper definition and context. It's just really, really important, because sometimes just a misunderstanding of one word can, or mischaracterization of one word can completely change your understanding, not only of the words itself, but now of your own purpose and design, your divine design here on the earth, your function here on the earth as a man or a woman. It really does help us to get context and get back to the center. It helped us, I know, for me, get an understanding of why the battle of the sexes began, where there was that original breakdown and falling part of relationships. And also because we had the original understanding of what their roles and functions were to begin with, we can start to take a journey back to the original idea and vision for relationships as we step more and more into the roles that we were designed to fill, the functions we were designed to serve, and the purposes that we were designed to fulfill. And so happily ever after and living a life in paradise actually is not a fantastical thought. It's not a fantastical paradigm. As she's helped us to understand, it was actually the original vision and intent for God, for us to live happily ever after in a paradise. Now it's just up to us to take ourselves and put ourselves in position where we work our way back to Eden. Wow, that has been extraordinary. You can find the additional resources and information and all of the text that we discussed here on the blog post for this particular episode on www.the2tangoshow.com. And as we say on the 2 Tango show, it not only takes two to tango, but absolutely it takes you to tango. Ciao.
We have just concluded another moving episode of the 2 to Tango show with Linda Sutton. Did you enjoy the show? If so, head over to the2totangoshow.com and discover a whole array of resources to help you spice up your relationship in every way. That's tangoshow.com. We would also like to hear from you, so don't forget to leave a review or feedback. Join us again next week for another entertaining and fun episode. Until then,